So now, what is the career path in data science since it has been 10 years? In terms of the career ladder, so usually if you are a new grad, non-PhD, you start from L3. This is also an example. Different company will have different levels. Some company will level people higher, some company will level people lower. It doesn't really make big difference because the compensation will match. So some companies, L4 compensation is the other company's L3. They just call it differently. But usually if you're a new grad, like for example, you will start from L3. If you are a new grad PhD, you start from L4. If you work a couple years, you probably get to senior. That's the title people use the most. Then staff, that's L6. Depending on the company, some company from L5 to L6, it will be very difficult. L3, 4, 5 usually is pretty easy. Just work a couple of years, you have promotion. It's pretty straightforward. Start from L5 to 6 and 6 to 7. It's getting harder and harder. When you get more senior, it's not just about you have the technical skill to do your work without someone hand-holding. It's more about you can impact others in the organization. You start from you can impact people in your org. And then when you get from L7 to LA, you have to impact people from different org. You have to set up the discipline, set the direction for the discipline. And if you want to go from LA to L9, not every company has L9 for that tech role. But if you have that role, basically that means you have to have industry leadership, some kind of industry leadership, not just your company. So it's getting harder and harder. You can go to IC role or you can stick with the management role. So for some company, these two roles are pretty easy to switch. If you are staff, one day you say you want to be a manager, you can talk to them, they can find out some way, and then you can switch to the manager role. So it's switchable. But for some company, it's harder. And also, not every company has very good paths for IC. Some company, for IC, it's not they don't have that level. They probably have an ICLA. But because of the status of that company, you just can't have an IC project that has that impact, will move you from L7 to LA. So at that company, basically your path is blocked there if your goal is to go up and you have to switch to management role. But if you just start your career, you probably don't need to worry that much. What matters more is the company's brand. If you do the things you like, will make you sharpen your skill. You can learn because the level won't matter that much when you start. Startup mature company, I had experience with very early startups. So just a summarize of what could be different for a startup. Hopefully it will be helpful for you. If you want to find a job, you are wondering if you should go to a startup or a mature company. So basically, if you summarize it, at startup, you have less direction, more autonomy. You have less support because one can handhold you, tell you what to do. And you have more equity, but the value is unknown. If you want to talk more about equity, I have a lot of lessons about equity and how to realize them. I can share offline. And the compensation is lower if you don't count the equity that you don't know the value, but you have a much bigger scope. You can do a lot more creative things than at a bigger company. For a bigger company, I mean public or pre-IPO. I wouldn't consider Airbnb before IPO is a startup. So a lot of today's startup, they already have Series F. I don't think they are startup anymore. But for the even bigger company like Google, Apple, so you own a very small scope, and sometimes you have to fight to get the right project. Everyone wants to work on very impactful project, but there are tons of projects just maintaining the system. Do what people did before. Someone probably left the company and they hire a person to fill that position. The person need to do what they did before. That you have to take care of that first. So that could happen, but you have a lot of support because there's tons of documentation. The process is clear. You know what to do. Like since day one, they give you a good introduction and onboarding. So that's big company. Also, you have a good brand. Like the good company brand can help you land your next job. It's harder for startup, but less flexibility and impact.